With Scream 7 being so far away, I figured I would give my idea on what I would do with Scream 7. I always strongly felt the Scream franchise revolves around Sidney Prescott and the rippling effects of what started with her mother Maureen Prescott aka Rena Reynolds. So, I feel a continuation of those events are needed. The return to Woodsboro. A quiet evening in Woodsboro. The camera pans over the familiar town, now seemingly peaceful after years of turmoil. Neil Prescott, Sidney's father, now older and living a quiet life. The scene mirrors the opening of the first Scream movie with a suspenseful build-up. Neil receives a mysterious phone call. The voice on the other end is Sidney's, but something feels off. Sidney's voice. "Hi, Dad. It's me, Sidney." "Neil." Confused, "Sidney? Is everything all right?" Sidney's voice. "Do you remember the first time you couldn't protect me? How helpless you felt?" Neil. Alarmed, "What? What would make you ask this? Should I be worried?" Sidney's voice. "I want you to feel that helplessness again." As the conversation carries on, Sidney begins to make remarks about how he was never a good father. How could he allow his wife, her mother, to be brutally murdered? Neil runs for his truck when he realizes the tires have been slashed. The garage begins to close. Neil glances at the door that leads into the house with Ghostface peering down at him. Neil attempts to flee before falling victim to the hands of Ghostface. As Neil runs across the front yard toward the neighbors, Ghostface strikes him from behind, causing Neil to fall to the ground as he yells for help before Ghostface plunges their knife into his chest. Neil fights off Ghostface as he struggles to his feet, stumbling toward his neighbor, unable to make a sound as the blood swells, filling his innards. Ghostface stalks Neil as Neil continues to stumble and crawl, stabbing him with sick satisfaction. The scene ends with a chilling shot of Ghostface standing over Neil's body, the phone still in their hand, recording his last moments. Later his neighbor comes out to see Neil strung from a tree, letting out a blood-curdling scream. The next morning, the town is abuzz with news of Neil Prescott's murder. The media swarms the town, drawing parallels to the original killings. There's even an online group dedicated to blaming and accusing Sidney for everything. Sidney falls prey to the ever-growing backlash. Early in the cozy living room of Martha Meek's home, the atmosphere is warm and filled with the sounds of chatter. Martha Meeks is seen reacting to the news in horror, changing the channel as Mindy and Chad approach. Mindy, grabbing her jacket, "Mom, we're heading out. Maybe after tonight, your son won't be moping around the house. So, don't wait up." Chad, smiling, "Yeah, we'll be back late. You sure you'll be okay? With today being what day it is?" Martha, waving them off with a smile, "I'll be fine, kids. It's the anniversary of Randy's death, so I'm planning a horror movie marathon in his honor." Mindy, pausing, looking serious, "Just be careful, okay?" Martha, nodding, trying to stay upbeat, "I will. You two go have fun. I'll be here, safe and sound." Chad, hugging his mom, "Love you, Mom. See you later." Mindy, hugging her mom too, "Love you. Call us if you need anything." Chad, pausing as Mindy locks the door, "Don't expect much. I just don't know if I'm ready." Mindy drops her head back in annoyance, "Dude, Tara's gone and not coming back. That's what tonight is for, bro. We'll be back tomorrow, and you can continue to mold into the couch." The front door closes as Mindy and Chad leave. Martha settles into the couch, surrounded by DVDs of classic horror movies. She pops one into the player and grabs a bowl of popcorn. The house is quiet except for the sounds of the movie. Martha is engrossed in the film when she notices that she is low on popcorn. Suddenly, the phone rings. Martha answers it without looking at the caller ID. Martha, cheerfully, "Hello?" Randy's voice, "Hey, sis. Watching some scary movies without me?" Martha, freezing, her face turning pale, "Randy? This isn't funny." Who is this? Randy's voice, it's me, Martha. Don't you miss our movie nights? Martha, voice shaking, stop it. This isn't funny. Randy's voice, remember the rules, Martha. Always check the back seat. Martha's eyes widen in fear. She slowly turns to look behind her, but the room is empty. She stands up, her heart pounding, and starts to check the house. Randy's voice, you can't escape, Martha. Like in the movies, the killer is always closer than you think. Martha moves through the house, locking doors and windows, her fear growing. She reaches the kitchen and grabs a knife, her hands trembling. Randy's voice, you know how this ends, don't you? Ghostface suddenly appears, attacking Martha. She fights back fiercely, but Ghostface overpowers her. In a struggle reminiscent of Stu's death, Martha is pushed against the kitchen counter, and Ghostface slams her head into the microwave, turning it on. The scene ends with a chilling shot of Martha's lifeless body, the microwave beeping in the background. The camera pans out from the house, showing it from the outside, creating a sense of isolation and impending danger. This scene builds tension and suspense, showing the emotional connection between the characters and the psychological torment inflicted by Ghostface. It pays homage to the original Scream movie while adding a new layer of horror. Woodsboro Town Hall. The quaint town of Woodsboro, now bustling with life. The town hall stands tall, a symbol of resilience and community. Inside, Mayor Gail Weathers Riley sits at her desk, her eyes scanning over the latest reports. The door creaks open, and Sheriff Derek Farney steps in, his face etched with dread. Gail, looking up, Derek, come in. I just got in last night, sorry if you couldn't reach me. It was nice to get away and not focus on the excitement of Woodsboro. What's the latest? Sheriff Farney, sighing, it's Neil Prescott. He's been murdered. The town is on edge, and I feel the pressure to solve this quickly without causing a panic. Gail's eyes widen in disbelief. She stands up, her mind racing. Gail, Neil? This can't be happening again. We need to get to the bottom of this, and fast. Sheriff Farney, I was hoping you could act as a consultant on this case. Your experience with these kinds of situations is invaluable. Gail nods, her determination evident. Gail, of course. Let's start by reviewing the evidence. We need to find any connections to the past. The two sit down, poring over the files. The weight of the situation hangs heavy in the air. Sheriff Farney, I've grown close to this town, Gail. I feel like I'm letting everyone down if I don't solve this. Gail, reassuringly placing a hand on his shoulder, we'll get through this, Derek. Together. Later that evening, Gail sits in her office, her phone in hand. She dials a familiar number, her heart pounding. Mark, it's Gail. The scene sets up the central mystery and the stakes for the rest of the movie, with the characters vowing to uncover the identity of the new Ghostface. The next day, a dimly lit office, filled with case files, photographs, and a large corkboard covered in notes and connections. The atmosphere is tense and focused. Mark Kincaid, pacing the room, looking at the corkboard, we need to find a pattern, something that connects these new murders to the original killings. There must be a reason why Ghostface is back. Kirby Reed, sitting at a desk, going through files. Mark sighs, rubbing his temples, Sydney can't know about this yet. She's been through enough. I promised her a normal life, and I intend to keep that promise as long as I can. Kirby nods, understanding, I get it. But we need to be prepared. If the killer is targeting people connected to Sydney, we could be in danger too. Mark, determined, that's why we need to stay ahead of this. We need to find out who the killer is before they get to her. Have you found anything unusual in the phone records or surveillance footage? Kirby, flipping through papers, there are a few leads, but nothing concrete yet. We need more time. Mark, looking at a photo of Sydney on his desk, time is something we don't have. Keep digging, Kirby. We need to stop this before it gets any worse. Sydney is at home, peaceful and unaware of the chaos unfolding. Sydney is seen going about her day, oblivious to the danger looming over her. The camera cuts back and forth between Mark and Kirby's intense investigation and Sydney's serene life, highlighting the contrast and building suspense. This scene sets up the secret investigation by Mark and Kirby, showing their determination to protect Sydney while keeping her in the dark about the new murders. It adds depth to the characters and builds tension for the unfolding mystery. A sunny afternoon in Sydney's backyard. The atmosphere is warm and cheerful, with Sydney playing with her two young daughters, Tatum and Lily. The girls are laughing and running around, while Sydney watches them with a smile. Sydney, laughing, "All right, girls, time to come inside for a snack." Tatum, giggling, "Okay." Lily, running towards the house, "Can we have cookies?" Sydney, smiling, "We'll see. Let's wash up first." Inside Sydney's cozy kitchen. The girls are sitting at the table, munching on cookies, while Sydney prepares some milk. The phone rings. Sydney glances at it, seeing an unknown number. She hesitates for a moment before answering. Sydney, answering the phone, "Hello?" Ghostface, in a distorted voice, "Hello, Sydney. It's been a long time." Sydney, rolling her eyes, thinking it's a prank, very funny. "Who is this?" Ghostface, "You don't recognize my voice? Maybe this will jog your memory." The voice changes, playing a recording of Neil Prescott's last words, filled with fear and pain. Sydney, freezing, her face turning pale, "What? How did you get this?" Ghostface, switching to Neil's voice, "Sydney, you couldn't save me. You couldn't save any of us." Sydney, shaking, trying to stay calm, "Stop it. This isn't funny." Ghostface, "It's not supposed to be. It's just the beginning." Sydney hangs up the phone, her hands trembling. She quickly dials her father's number, but it goes straight to voicemail. Sydney, leaving a message, "Dad, it's Sydney. Call me back as soon as you get this. It's important." She hangs up and immediately calls Mark. Mark, answering the phone, "Hey, Sid. What's wrong?" Sydney, voice shaking, "Mark, I just got a call from Ghostface. They played a recording of my dad's last words. I can't reach him. I'm scared." Mark, concerned, "Stay calm, Sid. I'm on my way. Lock the doors and stay with the girls. We'll figure this out." Sydney, "Okay. Please hurry." Sydney locks all the doors and windows, her mind racing. She gathers her daughters close, trying to stay composed for their sake. This scene builds tension and suspense, showing Sydney's initial disbelief turning into fear as she realizes the threat is real. It also highlights her protective instincts and the strong bond with her family. A quiet evening in Woodsboro. Mindy and Chad Meeks Martin are walking through their old neighborhood, reminiscing about their childhood. Mindy, looking around, "You know, Chad, I never thought I'd miss this place. But it feels good to be home." Chad, nodding, "Yeah, I know what you mean. There's something comforting about being back where it all started. Even with everything that happened." Mindy, sighing, "I regret leaving. Maybe if we had stayed, we could have been there more for Mom." Chad, putting an arm around her, "Don't blame yourself, Mindy. We couldn't have known." They arrive at their house, the front door slightly ajar. They exchange worried glances and rush inside. The house is eerily quiet. They call out for their mother, but there's no response. They move through the house, their anxiety growing. Mindy, voice trembling, "Mom? Where are you?" Chad, whispering, "Something's not right." They enter the living room and find their mother, Martha, lifeless on the floor with her head covered by the microwave. The horror of the scene hits them like a wave. Mindy, screaming, "Mom, no!" Chad, kneeling beside her, tears streaming down his face, "Mom, please. No." The house is now a crime scene, with police and media swarming the area. The news of Martha's murder spreads quickly, causing panic in Woodsboro. This scene will serve as a catalyst for Mindy's disdain of Sydney and becoming a part of the mob mentality piling against Sydney. The local police station. The town is in an uproar, with people pointing fingers and looking for someone to blame. The sheriff holds a press conference, urging calm and promising to find the killer. But the crowd is restless, and whispers of blame start to circulate. Townspeople, murmuring, "It's happening again. It's because of Sidney Prescott. She brings this evil with her." Mindy, listening, her face hardening, maybe they're right. Maybe Sidney is the reason all this keeps happening. Chad, grabbing her arm, "Mindy, don't say that. It's not Sidney's fault. She's a victim too." Mindy, pulling away, "Is she? Or is she the reason we're all suffering? Where's Sam? Where's Tara?" Local police try to calm the crowd, but the tension is palpable. The scene ends with Mindy and Chad standing apart, the weight of their mother's death and the town's anger pressing down on them. This scene captures the heartbreak of Mindy and Chad discovering their mother's body, the ensuing panic in Woodsboro, and the growing tension as the town begins to blame Sidney for the recurring violence. It also highlights the emotional conflict within Mindy, adding depth to her character. Late evening in Sidney's living room. The atmosphere is tense and filled with unease. Sidney is sitting on the couch, visibly shaken after the call from Ghostface. Mark, entering the room, sitting beside Sidney. "Sid, are you okay? What did they say?" Sidney, voice trembling, "It was Ghostface. They used my dad's voice, Mark. They played his last words. It was like he was right there, taunting me." Mark, wrapping his arms around her, "I'm so sorry, Sid. We'll find out who did this. I promise." Sidney, leaning into him, tears streaming down her face, "Why does this keep happening? Why can't we just have a normal life?" Mark, gently, "I don't know, but we're going to get through this. Together." Sidney's home office. Sidney is at her computer, scrolling through social media. Her face grows more distressed as she reads the comments. Sidney discovers an online group dedicated to stirring up hate toward her, blaming her for the Ghostface murders, and her family having a rippling effect that makes Woodsboro feel cursed. Sidney, reading aloud, "Sidney Prescott is a curse on this town. She brings death wherever she goes. It's all her fault." Mark, entering the room, seeing her distress, "Sid, what is it?" Sidney, turning the screen toward him, "Look at this. They're blaming me for everything. They think I'm the reason all this is happening." Mark, angry, "That's not true. You know that. They're just scared and looking for someone to blame." Sidney, despairing, "But what if they're right? What if this never ends? What if I'm the reason people keep dying?" Mark, firmly, "No, Sid. This isn't your fault. You've been through hell, but you're not to blame for what these killers do." The living room. Kirby enters, looking concerned. "Kirby, Mark, we need to talk." Mark, sighing, "Not now, Kirby. Sidney's been through enough tonight." Kirby, insistent, "She needs to know, Mark. About Martha." Sidney, looking between them, "What about Martha? What aren't you telling me?" Mark, taking a deep breath, "Sid, there's something you need to know. Martha, she was murdered. Mindy and Chad found her earlier tonight." Sidney, stunned, tears welling up, No, this can't be happening." Kirby, gently, "I'm so sorry, Sidney. You deserve to know the truth." Sidney, breaking down, "Why? Why is this happening again?" Mark, holding her, "I don't know, Sid. But we're going to find out. And we're going to stop them. I promise." The camera pans out from the living room, showing the family huddled together, determined to face the new threat. This scene captures the emotional turmoil Sidney experiences after being taunted by Ghostface, discovering the online hate, and learning about her father's murder. It also highlights the support and determination of Mark and Kirby to protect her and find the killer. The old Woodsboro High School loomed in the darkness, its windows shattered, and hallways filled with eerie silence. Mindy and Chad had been lured there, the corridors of their once familiar school, now a decaying relic of their past. With broken windows and graffiti-covered walls. The atmosphere is tense and foreboding. Mindy, walking cautiously through the dark hallways. Chad, are you sure this is a good idea? This place gives me the creeps. Chad, beside her, holding a flashlight. We need to find out who lured us here. Stay close. They hear a noise and turn to see a shadow moving down the hallway. They exchange worried glances and move towards the sound. Mindy, whispering, "Did you see that?" Chad, nodding, "Yeah." "Stay behind me." They come upon a dead end with the hallway extending left to right. Chad looks one way, Mindy the other. "Chad, we should split up. Cover more ground." Mindy, reluctantly, "You can't be serious. Uncle Randy is turning in his grave." Chad, reassuring, "I can see you from the end of the hall. If anything happens, I'll be there." Mindy, annoyed, "Way to jinx yourself." They split up, each taking a different end of the hallway. The camera follows Mindy as she moves cautiously, noticing stairs at the end of her side of the hallway. Mindy, chuckling, "There's my escape route." Mindy's heart pounding as she navigates the dimly lit hallways, her flashlight flickering. Suddenly, a shadowy figure emerged from the darkness, Ghostface. Before she could react, Ghostface lunged at her, slashing with a gleaming knife. Mindy screamed, stumbling backward, her phone clattering to the floor. Mindy, screaming, "Get away from me!" Ghostface slashes at her again, but she manages to dodge and run out of the classroom. The hallway. Chad, hearing his sister scream, sprinting towards the sound. He arrives just in time to see Ghostface attacking Mindy. Chad, yelling, "Mindy, get down!" With a roar, Chad tackles Ghostface, sending them both tumbling down a flight of stairs. They land in a heap at the bottom, Ghostface lying motionless. Mindy, whispering to Chad, "Are you okay?" Chad, groaning, getting up, "Yeah, I think so." Breathing heavily, Chad mustered his strength and kicked Ghostface in the chest, sending the figure sprawling. He stands up, only to feel a sharp, searing pain in his back. Another Ghostface has appeared, stabbing him viciously. Chad gasped, reaching behind to pull out the knife. Chad, struggling, "Run, Mindy." The second Ghostface revealed a second blade, plunging it into Chad repeatedly. Chad loses the strength to fight back, collapsing to the ground. Mindy watches frozen in terror as Ghostface wipes their blade clean. The first Ghostface begins to stir and get up. Mindy, whispering, "Chad, no!" Realizing she has no choice, Mindy turns and runs, tears streaming down her face. The two Ghostfaces pursue her through the dark hallways. She hears the footsteps of the two Ghostfaces pursuing her, their sinister laughter echoing through the halls. Mindy bursts through the entrance doors, running outside. She is confronted by police officers who have just arrived. Having received calls someone was breaking into the old high school. Police officer, "Miss, are you okay?" Mindy, panting, looking back, "My brother, he's still inside." Ghostface is back. The Ghostfaces disappear into the shadows, leaving Mindy to face the horror of what had just happened. The police rush into the building as Mindy collapses to the ground, overwhelmed by fear and grief. This scene captures and highlights the siblings' bravery and the horror of their situation, setting the stage for the ongoing mystery and danger. Late evening in Sydney's living room. The atmosphere is tense as Sydney, Mark, Kirby, and Gail sit around a coffee table covered with files and photos. Mark, pointing to a photo, "Sid, Gail, we've been looking into all the clues, and Billy's father, Hank Loomis, is starting to look like a suspect." Kirby, nodding, "Yeah, but there's a problem. His age makes it nearly impossible for him to be doing this alone. He could have an accomplice." Gail, skeptical, "Hank Loomis? I thought he disappeared after Billy's death. Why would he come back now?" Sydney, thoughtful, "Or he could be getting framed. Think about it. He disappeared and hasn't made an appearance, even after it was discovered he purchased a home in Woodsboro." Mark, considering, "That's a good point. If someone wanted to throw us off, framing Hank would be a smart move." Kirby, "We need to find out more about his recent activities and anyone he might be in contact with. If he has an accomplice, we need to identify them. The living room. The TV is on in the background, showing a breaking news report. News anchor, on TV, breaking news from Woodsboro. Another tragic death has been reported. Chad Meeks Martin, a local high school student, was found murdered in the abandoned high school earlier tonight. Sydney, gasping, covering her mouth, "Oh my God, Chad." Gail, turning up the volume, "This is getting worse. We need to act fast." Kirby, determined, "We can't let this go on. We need to find Hank Loomis and whoever is helping him, if he's involved at all." Sydney, resolute, "Let's get to work. We need to stop this before anyone else gets hurt." The camera pans out from the living room, showing the group united and ready to take on the new threat. This scene captures the urgency and determination of Sydney, Mark, and Kirby as they piece together the clues and consider the possibility of Hank Loomis being framed or having an accomplice. It also highlights the emotional impact of Chad's death on Sydney and the others. Mindy is sitting on the front steps of the police station, looking distraught. Sydney, Mark, Kirby, and Gail approach her cautiously. Sydney, gently, "Mindy, I'm so sorry about your mother and Chad. I can't imagine what you're going through." Mindy, looking up, tears in her eyes, "Why does this keep happening, Sydney? Why do we keep losing people we love?" Sydney, sitting beside her, "I don't know. But we're going to find out who's behind this and stop them." Mindy, voice shaking, "Sometimes I think, maybe it's because of you. Maybe all this death follows you." Sydney, taken aback, "Mindy, Mindy, interrupting, "I know it's not fair to blame you. But I can't help it. My mom is gone, Chad is gone, and I don't know how to deal with it." Sydney, holding her hand, "I understand. And I'm here for you. We're going to get through this together." The camera pans out, showing Sydney, Mindy, Mark, Kirby, and Gail standing together, united in their grief and determination to stop the killer. The room is filled with tension as Sydney, Gail, Mark, and Kirby are deep in discussion about their plan to expose the killer. Gail checks her watch, a look of urgency crossing her face. Gail, sighing, "I hate to do this, but I have to leave for a bit. I need to freshen up and talk to Sheriff Farney about increasing protection for the town." Sydney, concerned, "Gail, are you sure? We need you here." Gail, nodding, "I know, Sid. But this is important. We can't afford to leave any stone unturned. I'll be back as soon as I can." Mark, supportive, "Just be careful, Gail. We can't lose you too." Kirby, nodding, "We'll hold things down here. Just hurry back." Gail, smiling gratefully, "Thanks everyone. I'll be quick." Gail grabs her coat and heads for the door. As she leaves, she turns back to give them one last reassuring look. Gail, determined, "We'll get this done. Stay safe, all of you." Gail steps out into the crisp afternoon air, her mind racing with thoughts of the plan. She gets into her car and drives to the police station, her focus unwavering despite the gravity of the situation. Gail arrives at the police station and strides inside with purpose. She finds Sheriff Derek Farney and Deputy Harks in his office, reviewing evidence. He looks up as she enters. Derek looks as if he hasn't slept. "Sheriff Farney, resilient Gail, this is Deputy Martin Harks. We've been working together since his first year with the Woodsboro Police Department." Gail, focused, "Nice to meet you, Deputy Harks. Sheriff Farney speaks highly of you." Deputy Harks, full of anticipation, "Thank you, ma'am. It's an honor to meet you. I've heard a lot about your fight tooth and nail attitude." Sheriff Farney, confident, "I brought Harks in because I didn't know who else to trust with what we are facing with this case. A leak of any kind is the last thing we need. Harks has proven himself time and again." Gail, cautious, "I appreciate that, Sheriff. We need all the reliable help we can get. Let's take a look at this evidence." Deputy Harks, self-assured, "Absolutely. Let's get to work." Gail, serious, "Derek, we need to talk about increasing protection for the town. The situation is escalating, and we can't take any chances." Sheriff Farney, nodding, I agree. I've already started deploying more patrols, but we need a coordinated effort. What do you suggest? Gale, leaning forward, we need checkpoints at all major entry points to Woodsboro, and I want officers stationed at key locations around town. We also need to ensure that everyone knows to report any suspicious activity immediately. Sheriff Farney, taking notes, consider it done. Deputy Harks, inserting himself, it's all coming together. Gale, pausing, yes. I need you to keep an eye on Sydney, Mark, and Kirby. They're crucial to our plan, and we can't afford to lose them. Sheriff Farney, firmly, you have my word, Gale. We'll keep them safe. Gale, smiling slightly, thank you, Derek. I'll be headed home to freshen up, then the fun begins. Gale leaves the police station, feeling a renewed sense of determination. She knows that every second counts and that the safety of Woodsboro rests on their shoulders. Gale enters her home, quickly heading to her bedroom. She changes into fresh clothes, taking a moment to gather her thoughts in front of the mirror. Her reflection shows a woman determined and ready to face whatever comes next. Gale, to herself, you can do this, Gale. You've faced worse. She splashes water on her face, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. With a final glance in the mirror, she grabs her bag and heads back out the door. She walks toward a wall of pictures and begins to stare at a picture of Dewey. It was after he became the sheriff. With him looking mature and proud, giving an ending to his development from inexperienced to grizzled veteran. She grabs her bag and heads for the door. Just as she reaches for the doorknob, she hears a noise behind her. She turns, her eyes widening in shock as she sees a figure in a Ghostface costume emerging from the shadows. Gale, defiantly, you picked the wrong house. Ghostface lunges at her, knife gleaming. Gale dodges, grabbing a nearby lamp and swinging it with all her might. The lamp shatters against Ghostface's arm, causing them to stumble back. Gale takes the opportunity to run towards the kitchen, grabbing a knife from the counter. Gale, breathing heavily, come on then. Let's finish this. Ghostface recovers quickly, advancing on Gale with deadly intent. They engage in a brutal struggle, each trying to gain the upper hand. Gale fights with everything she has, landing several blows, but Ghostface is relentless. A well-placed kick sends Gale crashing into the kitchen table, the knife slipping from her grasp. Gale, struggling to get up, this isn't over. Ghostface looms over her, raising the knife high. Gale's eyes flash with defiance as she makes one last desperate attempt to fight back. She grabs a chair and swings it at Ghostface, but it's too late. The knife plunges into her chest, and she gasps in pain. Gale, sad face whispering, Sydney. I'm sorry. Ghostface steps back, watching as Gale collapses to the floor. The life slowly fades from her eyes, leaving a haunting silence in the room. Ghostface stands over her, breathing heavily, before turning and disappearing into the night. Sydney, Mark, and Kirby are anxiously waiting for Gale's return. Kirby, doubtful, where's Mindy? She said she would be here. It's bad enough we are waiting for Gale. Mark, focused, we need to keep cool heads, we are stronger together. Sydney, unshaken, she said she'll be here, she'll be here. The trauma doesn't have an off switch. The phone rings, and Sydney answers it expecting Mindy. Sydney's face going pale as she listens to the voice on the other end. Sydney, voice trembling, no, not Gale. She hangs up, her eyes filled with tears and fury. Mark and Kirby look at her, their expressions mirroring her shock and grief. Mark, softly, what happened? Sydney, determined, Gale's gone. Ghostface got to her. But we won't let her death be in vain. We finish this, tonight. The scene ends with Sydney, Mark, and Kirby standing together, their resolve hardened by the loss of their friend. The fight is far from over, and they are more determined than ever to bring justice to Woodsboro. Sydney, Mark, and Kirby read cautiously entering the dark, abandoned Mocker house. The air is thick with tension, and the only light comes from their phone flashlights, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Mark, whispering, "Stay close. We don't know what we're walking into." Kirby, nodding, her voice steady, "Got it. Let's find out what's going on here." They move through the house, their flashlights illuminating old, dusty furniture and faded memories of a past filled with horror. Suddenly, the lights flicker on, blinding them momentarily. As their eyes adjust, they see a figure in a Ghostface costume stepping out from the shadows. Ghostface, voice distorted, "Welcome back, Sydney. Long time no see." Sydney, Mark, and Kirby tense up, ready for a confrontation. Ghostface pulls off the mask, revealing Leslie Mocker, her face twisted with anger and pain. Leslie, bitterly, "Surprised to see me, Sydney? You shouldn't be. This has been a long time coming." Sydney, shocked, "Leslie? Why are you doing this?" Leslie, voice trembling with emotion, "Because of you, Sydney. Because of what Billy did to my brother. Stu was the only one who ever showed me love, and you took him away from me." Mark, stepping forward, "Leslie, this isn't the way. Killing won't bring Stu back." Leslie, ignoring Mark, her eyes fixed on Sydney, "After Stu died, our parents moved away, leaving me to fend for myself. After all, I wasn't Stu. But I was pregnant and alone, as my life fell apart. Then I had my beautiful baby boy. I had the chance at a fresh start, the chance at a family that wouldn't leave or abandon me. Until my poor Vince had to pay the price for the curse placed on this town when your filthy whore mother couldn't stop from spreading her legs. Meanwhile, you kept surviving and thriving even while everyone else died. You're a curse, Sydney, a curse on Woodsboro, a curse on everyone around you." Sydney, trying to reason with Leslie, "I never wanted any of this. I never wanted anyone to die." Leslie, screaming, "But they did. And it's all because of you. Vince's murder was after this curse was revived, and it was clear then that you and Sam have to die for us to be free from this curse." Leslie's face contorted with rage as she recalls the past. Leslie, bitterly, "I remember walking in on Billy and Stu talking about Maureen. I tried to save Stu from Billy, but it was too late. And now, Billy's daughter, Sam, will suffer the same fate." Leslie's voice drops to a menacing whisper. Leslie, smirking, "But I'm not alone. Age has taken its toll, so I found help." She gestures, and two more figures in Ghostface costumes step out, brandishing gleaming knives. Leslie, triumphantly, "I found an online group that also sees Stu as the innocent accomplice manipulated by Billy. These men wanted to avenge him and his nephew. Together, we'll finish what was started." Sydney and Kirby exchange a determined look, their resolve hardening. Sydney, firmly, "This ends tonight, Leslie. No more bloodshed." Kirby, readying herself, "We're not going down without a fight." The scene ends as the three Ghostface dissolve into the dark house, the tension at its peak as they prepare for the showdown. The old Mocker house is eerily quiet, the moonlight casting long shadows through the broken windows. The air is thick with the scent of dust and decay. Mark moves cautiously through the darkened hallway, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. Suddenly, Ghostface emerges from a hidden doorway, knife flashing. Mark barely has time to react as Ghostface slashes at him. He blocks the attack with his arm, wincing in pain, and counters with a punch to Ghostface's gut. The two engage in a brutal fight, their grunts and the sound of their struggle echoing through the house. Kirby travels through the maze-like corridors of the house, her breath coming in short, controlled breaths. She glances back to see the second Ghostface pursuing her relentlessly. Kirby knocks over furniture, pulling her firearm and firing shots at Ghostface before Ghostface disappears, slamming doors behind them. Sydney Prescott stands in the living room, facing Leslie Mocker. The room is filled with the remnants of a past life, old photographs, and furniture covered in dust. Leslie's eyes gleam with a mix of hatred and madness as she circles Sydney. Leslie, in a focused rage, "You should have stayed away, Sydney. This is where it all began, and this is where it will end." Sydney grips her weapon tightly, ready for the fight of her life. Leslie lunges at her, and the two women clash in fierce hand-to-hand combat. Leslie's strength and ferocity give her the upper hand, and she manages to knock Sydney to the ground. Leslie, enraged, this ends tonight. Leslie raises her knife, ready to deliver the final blow. But before she can strike, Mindy Meeks bursts into the room, tackling Leslie to the ground. The knife skitters across the floor as Mindy and Leslie wrestle. Mindy, empowered, not on my watch. Sydney scrambles to her feet, grabbing the knife. She rushes to help Mindy, and together they overpower Leslie. Sydney aims to deliver a final, decisive blow, ending Leslie's reign of terror. When Mindy stops Sydney. Mindy, now understanding we can't become what she wants. This curse can end tonight. Without more death. Mark finally gains the upper hand against Ghostface, disarming and subduing him. But Ghostface won't go without a fight. Ghostface gives Mark false confidence by raising his hands. Mark holsters his weapon to ready his cuffs when Ghostface reveals a second knife and plunges the knife into Mark's ribs. Kirby, having lost her pursuer, discovers Mark in a fight to prevent Ghostface from taking his life. Kirby draws her weapon without hesitation, firing 2 shots into Ghostface's back. Ghostface collapses. Kirby approaches and fires more rounds. Ghostface is now motionless. Kirby dresses Mark's wound and helps him to his feet. Kirby and Mark reunite with the group. Sydney rushes to Mark and Kirby places handcuffs on Leslie Mocker. They stand together in the dimly lit room, bruised, bloody but victorious, as the sound of approaching sirens fills the air. The silhouette of a van is seen. The driver's door opens as Ghostface climbs in. He looks to the back to see another Ghostface, with Hank Loomis held hostage. Ghostface, relieved, I love it when a plan comes together.